The 1995 Porsche 911 GT2 EVO. Also known as the 993, the third-generation Porsche 911 arrived in 1993 as a replacement for the 964 version. The 993 was quite different from its predecessor, with only 20% of its parts carried over from the previous model. Also, the naturally aspirated 3.8-liter and the turbo 3.6-liter flat-six engines were completely new. Built until 1998, the 993 was not just the last air-cooled 911, but also the last of the hand-built 911s. Besides the usual Carrera and Turbo models, the 993 Gen 911 also spawned RS, Speedster, Targa, and GT2 versions. Although the Speedster is the rarest variant of the 993 based on production figures alone, only two were built by the factory. The GT2 is arguably the model that stirs the most interest, especially now that almost 2 decades have passed since the third Gen 911 was discontinued. Essentially a racing version of the turbo model, the 911 GT2 was developed for the new FIA regulations that did not allow all-wheel drive vehicles. Porsche deleted the front drivetrain, enhanced the aerodynamics, and came up with a lighter package thanks to various lightweight components that were used to replace the standard ones. To qualify the GT2 for racing, a limited number of street versions were created for homologation purposes. This is how the road-legal GT2 was born, and is now a model that is highly prized and valued by Porsche collectors. But Porsche didn't stop there, and eventually developed the GT2 into a more menacing racer. Dubbed the GT2 EVO and assembled in just 11 units, it was crafted for the top-level GT1 series. Keep reading to find out what makes the GT2 EVO one of the most valuable Porsche ever built. Continue reading to learn more about the 1995 Porsche 911 GT2 EVO. Exterior. Design-wise, the GT2 EVO was based on the GT2, which in turn was based on the 911 Turbo. Even though it retained some of the GT2's aggressive kit, the EVO's body received extensive modifications. After all, it was developed specifically for racing, unlike the GT2, which was also built with public roads in mind. Even though it retained some of the GT2's aggressive kit, the EVO's body received extensive modifications. Up front, the EVO and the GT2 were pretty much the same in terms of shape and size. Both shared the same wide wheel arches, headlamps, and hood, except for the latter's additional vent on the EVO. However, the EVO's bumper was completely redesigned. The daytime running lights and the lower vent were removed to make room for 2 larger intakes, 2 smaller cooling vents, and a racing tow hook. The splitter was also remodeled for enhanced aerodynamics and optimized airflow toward the front brakes. The front hood received quick-release pins, while the windscreen gained safety locks. Moving on to the sides, Porsche gave the EVO larger side skirts and new, race-spec BBS wheels with gold spokes that were wrapped in high-performance, wider Michelin tires. The standard side windows were replaced by race-spec, lightweight panels. Around back, the already massive wing of the GT2 received yet another wing on top, resulting in a 2-tier aero device that was as high as the roof. The engine hood gained quick-release pins, while the bumper was modified to accept an extra pair of exhaust pipes in the middle. Another interesting fact is that the usual GT2 badge was replaced with a GT on the wing. Interior. The EVO's interior was as race-ready as they get. Unlike the GT2, which was based on the RS and had a traditional layout for a road-going sports car, the GT2 EVO was modified to FIA specifications. The dashboard is pretty much the only feature that was kept from the standard GT2. Porsche added a new steering wheel wrapped in Alcantara for enhanced grip, replaced the door panels with lighter units, and stripped the carpet off of the floor and center tunnel. Only the driver's seat was left in place, but the rather comfy leather seat in the GT2 was replaced with race-spec Recaro with sabled harnesses. The coupe was also equipped with an FIA-approved full roll cage and a fire extinguishing system. Drivetrain. The GT2's turbocharged 3.6-liter flat-six unit was already impressively powerful at 424 horsepower and 400 pound-feet in 1995, but Porsche knew that it wasn't enough for the GT1 class. By modifying several engine components, the Germans managed to squeeze a whopping 600 horsepower and 490 pound-feet from the six-cylinder mill, which made the GT2 EVO the most powerful 911 in history at the time. The Germans managed to squeeze a whopping 600 HP and 490 lb-ft from the six-cylinder mill, which made the GT2 EVO the most powerful 911 in history at the time. It was also the quickest, being able to sprint from 0 to 60 miles per hour in about 3.3 seconds, a figure superior to many supercars back in the mid-1990s. Top speed was rated at 187 miles per hour, another figure that many high-profile sports car manufacturers struggled to achieve. The powerful 3.6-liter engine used a 6-speed transmission to send the 600 horses to the rear wheels. The gearbox was retuned to handle the extra power, as were the chassis, suspension, and braking systems. In short, the GT2 EVO was a full-blown race car underneath and not just a Porsche with a fancy body kit. Prices. Pricing of the GT2 EVO was never made public, but much like any high-performance, factory-built race car, it wasn't cheap. It was the most expensive 993 Gen 911 ever, and the fact that Porsche produced only 11 says a lot about its sticker. Nowadays, GT2 EVOs can easily fetch in excess of $500,000. A near-mint, one-owner model with just 4,350 miles on the clock went under the hammer at Monterey in August 2016, selling for $1 million. Although that's lower than the $1.25 to $1.75 million estimate, it's still quite a lot for a vehicle that technically is not a classic yet. Brief racing history. Raced between 1995 and 2000, the 911 GT2 EVO had a successful stint at the track, scoring 5 overall wins, 6 class wins, and an additional 20 podium finishes in 91 events. In 1999, it won 2 races at Monza, while in 2000 it triumphed twice in the Spanish GT of Jarama. Success came early in its career, finishing second in its first 2 official races at the 4 Hours of Jerez and 4 Hours of Paul Ricard. Notable results from 1996 include a second place in the 2 Hours of Dijon. 1998 was by far the EVO's most successful year, with wins at 4 Hours of Paul Ricard and Mosport and 10 podiums in various events in Europe and North America. In 1999, it won 2 races at Monza, while in 2000 it triumphed twice in the Spanish GT of Jarama. The 911 GT2 EVO was also raced at Daytona, Sebring, and Le Mans, but without significant results other than a 5th and 6th place finish at Daytona in 1997 and a 6th place at Sebring in 1996. The GT2 EVO was driven by a large number of famous drivers in the 1990s, including Jean-Pierre Jarier, Bob Wollek, and Hans-Joachim Stuck. Competition. McLaren F1 GTR. Developed for GT1 class racing, the GT2 EVO hit the track the same year the F1 GTR did. Heavily based on Gordon Murray's road-going design, the F1 GTR was significantly different than the GT2. Not only did it have a mid-engine configuration, it also used a naturally aspirated powerplant instead of a turbocharged unit. Motivation was provided by a 6.1-liter V12 developed by BMW, also rated at 600 horsepower. The F1 GTR often defeated the GT2 EVO at the track and had a more prodigious career with 39 overall wins and 64 podiums. The F1 GTR also won the 24 Hours of Le Mans in 1995. Interestingly enough, it took Porsche some 3 years to defeat McLaren at Le Mans with the mid-engined 911 GT1 that replaced the GT2 EVO. Nowadays, the F1 GTR is a lot more expensive than the Porsche, fetching in excess of $5 million depending on racing history. Find out more about the McLaren F1 GTR here. Ferrari F40 LM GTE. Although Ferrari never intended to race the F40, the car saw competition as early as 1989 in the hands of privateers who modified road-going models. Maranello supplied the first factory-made race cars in the 1990s, with both the F40 LM and F40 GTE competing against the 911 GT2 EVO. The F40 LM was raced between 1994 and 1996 with marginal success, while the F40 GTE saw more track action between 1994 and 1998 with 5 wins and 14 podiums from 35 events. Ferrari built only 10 race-spec F40s, which makes them very rare and expensive on the used car market. Obviously, most of them are sold through auction events for sums that usually surpass the $1 million mark. Read more about the Ferrari F40 LM here. Conclusion. The 993 generation is arguably the most coveted 911 from the 1990s, despite not being a classic yet. The reason for that is that it was the last air-cooled and hand-built 911, on top of being considered a 911 that successfully blends the classic Porsche design with more modern cues. The GT2 is yet another reason why the 993 Gen is so popular with collectors, and the EVO only makes the generation that much more exotic. Sure, Porsche has made a couple more GT2 versions since then, but the original is usually considered the best. And granted, enthusiasts certainly know what they're talking about, because the power and performance of the GT2 EVO definitely recommend it as a fantastic supercar for the racetrack. Love it. One of the most powerful 911s ever created, the rarest 993 generation 911, plenty of racing heritage. Leave it very rare and expensive, track-only model, not good enough to defeat the McLaren F1 GTR.
If you liked this video, please share your thoughts in the comments below and don't forget to hit the subscribe button.